want to get these 5 principles out because I think they're going to do such a great job defining what it means to be unconditional. That is the game changer for me. So if we were to just go one step further, when we talk about what does it mean to make your spouse your number one priority, it means to take their needs, their wants, and their dreams, and to make them your number one priority. It is putting your spouse above yourself. I had a really beautiful gift by the man that married me and my wife in Washington, D.C. It was Clint's grandfather. This was a really good man. This is a man who was a U.S. congressman for the state of Utah. He was Congressman King was also an ambassador for the government to Madagascar. This man in the LDS community was a temple president, general authority. He was really, really well known. When he married Clint and I, he sat us down in the room before we would actually have the marriage ceremony. He says, listen, the marriage ceremony is important, but I'm going to say a lot of things, and frankly, you guys aren't going to listen to almost any of it. So he says, I want to say then this one thing to you. And I wanted to listen to what this man had to say because he had memorized every word in the dictionary. This man was smart. He was a lawyer, well-studied, and I wanted to know what his advice was. And he said, he turned to me, looked me right in the eyes, and he says, will you commit to make her happy, to do everything in your power to contribute to her happiness? And I said, yes. And then he turned to her and he asked her the same question. And what was so beautiful in that is going back to what Marianne says, when we tie in this unconditional principle, it is choosing to be committed, like Gerhard said, 100% for the other person, especially when they are not, especially when they are at their worst. And when both parties get to the point where they can give in that manner, everyone gets taken care of, and you do so much more than you could ever selfishly give yourself. Totally changes the game. Second principle, no strings attached. Part of being unconditional means that I give without the expectation of receiving. Negotiating is for contracts. A marriage isn't a contract, it's a covenant. It's something that means more. If it was a contract, then I would be worth 50%, you'd be worth 50%. And the moment you don't do what you're supposed to, then we look at the contract, we look at the negative consequences, and we either remedy it or we go into termination clauses, exit strategies. But that's not really how marriage is set up. It says, I give 100%, you give 100%. So what we love to do is we love to attach strings. We love to create expectations. We love to say, yeah, I'm going to do this really nice thing for my spouse, but then they're going to have to show up and do that one thing for me. That keeping score, how's that work? Does anyone here have experience with keeping score and how that's working for them or how that worked for them in the past? We've got many guests here joining us over the internet.
I don't know if it's... Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's really a story, but I think some of that comes down to how you were conditioned as a child. If your parents or even maybe your schooling had a lot of strings attached to things, you tend to attach strings to things, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to let go of. If you were raised in a family that didn't attach strings, so sometimes one spouse is attaching strings and the other one isn't, because of how you're raised, and it's really hard to get past all that. But once you do it, it changes everything.
I completely agree with you that we are conditioned to have strings. Yeah. And this highly conscious activity is to learn how to cut all those cords, snip them, learn to let go of those expectations.
Chris, I think a lot of those patterns are not even on the surface noticeable or conscious. And if the spouses don't actually discover that's how they run, that's their pattern, you won't even know why you're dysfunctional until you can, oh, this is what I'm actually doing. Wait, but you're not doing that. There's something wrong here. Let's talk about it and actually talk about how you operate. Has anyone else kept score on who's changed more poopy diapers? Because that was me. It's your turn, because I did, 7 just 2 days ago.
But if I did a blowout, that's at least worth 12 normal diapers.
So the most success that I've had in cutting these strings is to identify where my needs weren't getting met and find a way to meet those myself. So I don't need from my spouse to show up in a certain way. I'm secure. She can show up however she chooses.
I like that. It's really beautiful.
Very good, Ryan.
Okay, no trades, no scorekeeping, no negotiating. Principle number 3. This is going to seem like one of those cheesy platitudes. Be the change you want to see.
Ryan just led right into this one, and he didn't even know it.
What does that mean to you, Glenn? Be the change you want to see.
Well, it reminds me of situations in marriage and in our past where we tried to change the other person, and the insecurity there was a projection. What was important. Remember last time we talked, for those of you who weren't here, we talked about one of us being messy and one of them not being messy, and how, what Chris was projecting on, Glenn, you need to be cleaner, was his own, I need to be clean because that's what's important to me. So, by letting go of the expectation, taking control of what you want, what is important to you, that fulfills that wrongful exchange.
Yeah. Right now, if you have pen and paper, make a list of the top 3 things you would love to change about your spouse. Just right now, just write them down. Are there 3 things that you'd love to see them doing different? And whether we go through 1,000 examples, there's a formula for what will bring you happiness. Whatever you're writing down, go out and do it for you. Stop making them do it for you. Stop wanting them to do it for you. Just, you do it. What do you want? If I want the socks picked up off the ground, for heaven's sakes, Chris, stop telling her to go do it. Just go pick them up. Whose truth is it? Yeah, stop projecting your truth on your spouse and saying, here's the formula. If my spouse will change X equals, I will be happier. Isn't that the formula? So what we do is we basically say, here's the new formula. Whatever I want my spouse to change, I just change in myself and honor as my truth. They don't need to have it as their truth. Whose truth is it? So by the way, here's the beautiful thing about 2 people being very different instead of copycats of each other. I get to bring my strengths and weaknesses. She gets to bring her strengths and weaknesses. And as long as one of us has the strength, then who has the strength? We have the strength. I lived in a world where I kept wanting to pass my wants, needs, and desires on to her that she had to have them. And it didn't work. So it was a huge game changer for me to have this huge epiphany. Chris, for heaven's sakes, your happiness is not tied to your spouse becoming different. This is the person you married. Love them and embrace them as they are. Honor your truth and let your truth strengthen your marriage. Let your truth strengthen your marriage. Stop waiting for them to share the truth to strengthen what is already there. Let me pump out this next one, and then we can have some good, fruitful discussion on all of these together. I cannot help. This is one of the principles in the Conscious Creator. It's accountability. It's the one thing that always shows up in the opposite of our victimhood. Someone else is in charge of my happiness. Victimhood. Accountability. Here's what I love to remind myself. I never have permission to be upset at my spouse for something they do. Now think about this one. You may want to write this one down. I never have permission to be upset at my spouse for anything they do. Do you know why? Because I chose to marry him. Who should I really be upset at? I got myself into this thing. I said yes, I said I do to everything I did and didn't know. Stop living in a world where you only said yes to what you thought you knew. You said yes to everything, all the thoughts, motives, dreams, desires, fears that you never knew about. And that's part of the package deal. So accountability says, for me, I never have permission to be upset at my spouse. Every single time I've ever been upset at that woman right there, and I got to the other side of the process, accountability always said, look in the mirror, who's upset? Who's got the problem? This is going to be really profound, Chinese proverb. Whoever has the problem
Has the solution.
has the problem. And whoever has the problem has the solution. Absolutely. You chose in to this 100% commitment. I never have the right to be upset at my wife. I said yes. It was a total package deal. I can't say yes to the things I like and no to the things that I don't. Once I do, then she's only my priority when she's good for me. She's only my priority if I like what she's doing. And that usually means she's my priority if she's serving me and giving me what I want. Last principle, and then we're going to tie this all together.
Wait, did anyone have any things to share on this one?
It's very important, I say this as I give the mic to Carolyn. You don't have to like anything we say tonight. You don't have to agree, because all we're doing is sharing who's truth. Yeah, it's just things that are working for us.
I just wanted to share the main thing that I have found when I have chosen to be accountable, like what you were saying about the things that you wanted to have your spouse change and you change instead. It's been so amazing, because every time that I have taken responsibility and accountability for those things that were bothering me and I changed myself instead, Gary has changed with me. It's so amazing. It's like what I wanted to have changed the whole time, if I would have changed myself, it would have been fixed.
I was terrified for a decade to follow Grandpa King's advice. And he passed from this earth. And it was after he passed that I actually dared to do an experiment. I had done little experiments. I'm going to put Colen's needs before me for this little thing. I'm going to go buy her a gift. I'm going to serve her. I'm going to rub her foot, do whatever she wants. But there were strings attached. But then I'm going to wait and see if she reciprocates, because if she doesn't, I'm not doing that again. That was the way that I operated for a decade, until I finally said, Chris, you got to jump in 100% both feet. Try on this 100% commitment, and here's what it meant. It meant showing up for my wife, and then she didn't show up. And then I showed up again, and she didn't show up. And then I showed up again, and I showed up again, and I showed up again. And you know what was strange? She started showing up. And it was like, this is magical. I'm just going to want to keep serving her. That was my experience. All of us I have the secret for how to change your spouse. Change you. And it invites a space that says, hey, I'm just on this journey traveling. We're in this thing together, I think. I'm traveling. See ya. I love you. I'm just going to keep serving you. And you know what? Then she has a choice. I either what? Follow him or not. And at least for me, it turned into this side-by-side journey. It's really cool.
It was a beautiful process. Can I just say, I was in a place where I was very easily distracted and unconscious in my day-to-day life. So, like kids, housework, making food, and all Chris really wanted was connection. And like he would come home from work, and I'm just in mom mode. Hi, honey, how you doing? You know, busy doing this. And it would be hours before we would communicate and like actually come together and like really see each other and like really connect. And you know, when he decided to just show up anyway, even if I just kept falling into that unconscious zombie mode, we'll just call it that, he just kept loving on me and loving on me and loving on me. And all of a sudden, like, I couldn't help it but just be like, oh my gosh, you're so nice. Okay, I'm just going to love on you now, because I just felt him. I just felt him. And I had to do some I don't know the right word, boundary checks where, like, I would catch myself and saying, I see what I'm doing right now. I'm totally in logistics mode. I'm in mom mode. Okay, hold on. Just give me 10 minutes. I'm just going to go clear my head. I will not be mom anymore. I will be wife. Kids are in bed. I'm going to be wife now. And I actually had to do that a few times. I had to go take a bath. I had to go, just lie down by myself and just shift. And by shifting, and I don't have to do it as much anymore because I'm there. I'm there now. I can just, kids are in bed. Okay, boom, wife. And it's not quite so hard. And now, I can be mom and wife at the same time, and during the busy and the crazy, and look over and say, I'm here. We can still connect even through the busy craziness.
Yeah. For me, before I share this final principle and we really get into heavy discussion on this, and maybe even give a couple couples an opportunity, I wish there were adequate words. These aren't words that I actually almost share with anyone. This is just really, I think, the right time and place to say that I've tasted of the bitter. We know what a very dysfunctional marriage looks like. We lived one for actually a number of years. A lot of pain, a lot of story, a lot of victimhood. I fast forward and having these principles with me the last several years, if I were to try to put in the English language words to what I've experienced, it's this oneness almost feels like a mental telepathy. We are on such the same sheet of music, same page, that whether I'm wearing a roll of a hat, which doesn't define me, of I'm working at Strongbrook, or Glenn is wearing the roll of a hat, I am mother, or I am taking daughter to dance lessons, or I am shopping, or whatever, in how we separate our roles, there is this insane, nearly constant connection that we have. And the connection is we are so important to each other that at any time during the day I can text, call, reach out. Every day there's a date somewhere in there. We spend a couple hours in the morning. We'll get up before 5 o'clock to go to the gym or run if Clint doesn't have a broken foot. The time, I really wish there were adequate words because energetically, it is the sweetest and purest thing that I've ever experienced. I had a vision of what I thought marriage could become like if two people worked at it, and where I'm at today, it's exceeded my imagination. It's exceeded, honestly, what I felt was possible. It doesn't mean that we don't have our moments where we fall out of connection and then get right back on.
I think one of the most important things to us is time. We're always looking at the schedule, trying to book the next hour or 2 hours of time we can have together. And it's every morning, 2 hours, and every evening, kids go to bed, we're ruthless, 7 o'clock. Maybe our 8-year-old's 8 o'clock, but she's reading a book by herself, And we get 7 to 10, that is ours. And then somewhere else in the day, we try and sneak in an hour here, an hour here, an hour here.
I would sacrifice.
It's precious. Time is so precious in our marriage, and we fight for it. We fight tooth and nail for it. Yeah. We can't do without it, or we don't want to do without it, because we know our marriage would suffer.
I would give up anything in a heartbeat. Anything, any worldly possession for my marriage, for my wife.
What you were just describing, Clint, sounds like dating. It's like, because I remember I would stay up until 4 a.m. to be with Clint, and then he would go home. He'd have to be to work at 6, and I would have to be to work at 8, and then we would do it all over the next day. And that's what it sounds like. You fight for every minute that you can have.
Yeah. Well, think about it. What does it literally mean for someone to be a first priority? When you shift your priorities, it shifts all of your activities. It shifts the way you do things. Last thing I want to share right here. End the war. It's a great message there. End the war on being right. And there are 5 different levels that I'm aware of. I'll share a few of them with you that motivate people. Fear is an extremely powerful motivator, yes? How many of us do things out of fear? We do things out of fear. Some of us go to jobs we hate because we're afraid of not paying the what? Bills. So I'm going to do this thing we'll term a necessary evil. Fear can move to pride. Pride is a very powerful motivator. And pride is all about who? It's all about advancing yourself and making sure you get what you want. Love is a really powerful motivator. And I thought I knew what love was, and I thought that it was how I treated another person in a certain manner. But what I would like to put above that is this word that I've just come to love. It's one of my favorite words in the human language. Unconditional. We often talk about unconditional love. I'm just talking about being unconditional, period. So how many of you fight because you want to be right in your marriage? And being right is more important than your spouse's wants, needs, or dreams. Something that we do.
Who here has an issue with pride when you know you're wrong, but you won't admit it just because you don't want to admit that you're wrong? Anybody?
All right. So we got these 5 principles, and they're all different descriptors, ways of talking about different angles for what it means to be an unconditional human being, and in a marriage setting, an unconditional spouse. And there are 2 ways that this can work. One way is you're committed to being unconditional and following these rules, whether your spouse does or doesn't. And the second way is that if you commit long enough, it creates such a distinct separation in the marriage that it actually puts your spouse in a place of choice, real conscious choice. Because if you live these principles, this is what I like to call a pattern interrupt. I'm in love with pattern interrupts, by the way. I thought I would pull one on my family, and I couldn't make them flinch. It's my birthday today, so 4 o'clock, little family gets together, me and our 4 kids, and they're all singing the birthday song. And as they're singing the birthday song, I revert to 2-year-old.
1-year-old.
1-year-old. And I start eating the cake with my hands. And they're singing the song, and my kids start joining in. They start poking it. Like, I like this. This is awesome. They didn't even flinch. This is a really powerful pattern interrupt. And if you sustain it and actually commit to it, here's the reality. It puts your spouse in a really strange position. Because a commitment to this way of being either invites them by example to start mimicking and doing the same, or it could invite them to stay the same and go nowhere. But here's the reality. My experience is that if I'm truly committed to these 5 principles right here, I become happy. So now I want to bring up this question. Is my spouse responsible for, I hate this language thing, making me happy? I immediately get the no's like that's the right answer, but let's actually talk about it. Think about it. Is your spouse responsible for your happiness? Can your spouse actually make you happy?
No one can make you anything.
No one can make you anything? Is there anyone here, though, that likes to live in at least this idea or delusional state that they can?
Right, you made me upset. You made
You
me
made me
mad.
upset? That's a
You
good
made
one.
me do that.
Does anyone here ever do that? My spouse made me sad. This experience made me sad. Such and such made me unhappy. I chose to be unhappy. It is. It is always a choice. They say that there is a moment between stimulus and response. Who would like to live in a world where, under certain conditions, your agency is removed and you are no longer at choice? The only thing that puts you out of choice is when you see no choices but one. Having only one choice is the same as having no choice. And having one choice is a byproduct of being unconscious. But if you get conscious and you wake up, you're going to start seeing that you have infinite possibilities. Like I can poke my finger in the cake. And literally without hands, I went in for that cake. I know Kyle can't believe it. He's like, I see Chris at the gym in the morning. There is no way he would do that. That's totally, my kids were loving this. I totally went in there and face planted that thing. I'll post it on YouTube tomorrow.
My wife and I have thought about this making thing, and we changed our language, and we'll generally say invite. Like, that invited me. We'll kind of slip sometimes, say, oh, that invites me to feel very upset. Because we often feel like we know it's our choice and we're having a hard time. And so it's kind of a word for us. And I think that there may be a higher truth in that, but that's where we're at right now, is that invited me to be angry. I'm going to look at why I am being angry because of that, because I'm choosing to be angry because of the, kind of walk through it to get ourselves more conscious.
So powerful that, Matt, because that tiny little word choice right there all of a sudden puts you in a space to start thinking, how am I accountable? What's my choice in this situation? That's awesome.
I love that, Matt. Word choice is very important. And we use similarly, usually with being happy, the word, I like to use the word assist. So I don't want to make him happy because I can't. No one can make another person happy, but I like to assist in his happiness. I like to give him something that would contribute to it.
Yeah.
So I'll say that I want to contribute to your happiness, or I want to assist in your happiness.
Invite, assist, contribute. Beautiful diction that creates a different experience.
A while back, I learned that there's not one relationship between us. There's two. There's my relationship with her and her relationship with me. And so no matter what she's got coming at me, I still choose my relationship with her.
I like it. Any other comments on this?
I found that number 5 can be pretty deadly because I have a couple brothers who are divorced, and there's lots of issues that that I struggle with. And if I then make it about me being right on the issue, that's when it's very difficult, because it doesn't become the issue anymore. It's my own personal investment in being right. And that's a lot harder to overcome. That becomes then real war. The issue can be worked out fairly easily. It's just that my personal investment of being right that plants that stake of war.
Yeah. What would happen if we tried on for 1 week to live these 5 principles? I know many of you in this room do. What would it be like if you lived all 5 and did an experiment, a little social experiment in your marriage? What if it was something you did for yourself and it had nothing to do with your spouse, but your spouse got to actually benefit from it? What would happen if you lived it for a week? What could happen?
I'm very cognizant of the fact that everything that we're projecting us out onto other people. And when we're finding trouble with them, that is us. We're projecting. And as I watch myself do that, I go, oh, shucks, that's me. Now I got to change me.
That's so true. And it's powerful, isn't it? I like that. It's great.